Warning, due to some language and subject matter, listener discretion is advised.
It would be foolish to deny the difference between the performance of athletes right now and the performance of athletes as little as 10 years ago. There have been major strides in sports science and sports training, optimizing performance and efficiency alike. Based out of Landau Performance in Denver, Colorado, a place renowned for professional sports conditioning, my next guest has worked with some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts, including Justin Gaethje and Kamaru Usman. I'd like to welcome my new friend Aaron Porter to the show. We talk about his life journey. We just so happened to record this episode on his last day of working with Gaethje before the big May 7th fight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Calling in from Denver, Colorado, sports performance. What would you say it is that you do, Aaron?
Yeah, we call ourselves sports performance coaches. So it's like strength conditioning with a little bit extra involved there.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Aaron Porter, how the heck are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Mike, how are you, man?
Good. Well, thanks for doing the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. You've had your work cut out for you today. I was watching you on social media, and I was pretty pumped. And we could talk about what you did today and who you worked with and how excited we are. But before we do anything else, why don't you introduce yourself and tell my audience what it is you do?
I'm Aaron Porter. I work at Landau Performance. I'm a sports performance coach for a lot of the fighters at Elevation Fight Team, and I've been there at Landau Performance for about 8 years. I started as an intern under Lauren Landau and kind of learned his ways. It kind of put me on a fast track for my career at an early start. I was able to kind of make a lot of shortcuts because I had him right there in the room with me, and I think he's the best in the world at what he does. And so being able to work alongside him, it kind of put me in a great spot right out of the gate to work with a lot of the fighters he had already been working with. And then once he moved to the Denver Broncos, me and a colleague of mine, Nate Smock, took on the bulk of that. And so the bulk of the team from Elevation. We work with guys from Genesis. Onyx is kind of where Justin affiliates with. So Kamaru as well. So those are the guys that we work with, that kind of circle. Genesis, Onyx, Elevation, but it's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys on Elevation specifically, and so they definitely keep us busy.
I've asked this a few times because I've had a lot of Elevation fighters on my show, and what is it about Colorado in particular that's kind of become the hub of great MMA stars and great MMA athletes?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, the altitude. The training at altitude is very attractive to guys that don't want to get tired. And so to move up here and to be able to do your training at altitude, and then maybe fight somewhere closer to sea level, that gives you a great benefit. But also, there's just a lot of talent out here that you go into Elevation Fight Team, you're going to see a lot of high level fighters and high level coaches too. There's a ton of coaches there that'll take you under your wing and give you great instruction. Not just Elevation. Factory X is a stacked team here in town. There's a lot of competition here locally, and I mean the first UFC was out here, so it's been somewhere where MMA has been around for a while. People have been talking about it for a long time. And it's just grown. It's grown a lot since I've been training, since I've been coaching. The sport's just taken off over the last several years.
Yeah, I've made this parallel a lot on the show about how much the sport has evolved, more so in the past 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that's kind of a result of applying the science to it and a lot of what you do, what the athlete's output actually is, like actual functional sports performance type training as opposed to, just blunt trauma like it used to be?
Yeah, it just used to be like gym wars and just like who's the toughest guy. It kind of came down to who's the toughest guy in the room. And now it's not necessarily that. We're getting actually high-level athletes that are coming over into the sport that are making good money, and we're going about training in a much smarter way. We've learned a lot just in the time that I've been coaching. It's grown a lot. The technology that we use in the sport now, the way we set up a training camp. There's actually a lot of thought process that goes into this, a lot of data that goes into it that we look back on, on a regular basis and say, okay, hey, we need to make adjustments with this. We need to make adjustments with that. If I was to look at the workouts I was giving 5 years ago, I'd be like, man, who was giving this stupid workout to these guys? And so it's just changed a lot. It's grown a lot in all areas. The striking that they're doing is at a higher level. The wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, all of it is elevating individually, and I think that's what brings it up together. Is the sport just continues to get better and better.
It's kind of allowing recovery times to shorten, the window of recovery times to shorten a little bit better. This style of conditioning as well, isn't it?
Yeah, where we know like it's a more calculated approach where it's not just go to the red all the time, until the wheels fall off. And that's what was happening, quite some time ago, is not even that long ago, but just like a few years ago, it was like, man, I got to be the hardest worker in the room every time. And now it's like, well, look, if we're trashing ourselves on Tuesday to the point where we can't do anything on Wednesday, but the other guy didn't trash himself on Tuesday, he's still getting better on Wednesday. Like, what did we, where can we grow from this? Where can we learn from that? And so that's where we're at now. Like, we're getting through the week. It's a tough sport. It's still the toughest sport to train for. There's so many variables to it, and so many things that can happen along the way that it is still a grind. It's still pretty hardcore, but it's gotten a lot more calculated, a lot smarter, a lot more educated on when to push and when to pull back.
Right. So now that we've kind of gone through the minutia of, the particulars of what you do, let's talk a little bit about you and how you got into it and how your interest grew of this. You grew up in Kansas and you were a multi-sport athlete in high school, correct?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. When did your interest in sports start, and how did it evolve over the years to put you where you're at right now?
Yeah, I grew up loving sports my whole life. I remember at the youngest of ages, I'd play basketball, I'd play baseball, football, but I grew up in a small town in Kansas. Athletic opportunities aren't very plentiful there. So in the spring or in the winter, we would have in the fall, we would have 8-man football. We didn't even play 11-man football. It was a 1A school. So Little River, Kansas, 1A school, small town, like less than 500 people, where I grew up, kind of out in the country, on a farm. But I always was interested in athletics, so I played football in the fall, basketball in the winter. It's the only options we had. And then track was in the spring. And that's just kind of the three that you did. The coaches were the teachers, the school. There wasn't a lot of science. There was no science, really. There wasn't like a weightlifting program in the off season. There wasn't these kind of things. So then, after high school, I went into the Marines, and kind of to get out of that small town. I wanted, I really wanted more than what was offered there. And so, I looked at the Marines as a great way out. I had some buddies that were doing it, and I wanted that challenge. And so right out of high school, I went straight to the Marines, and that's where I learned about the UFC and MMA. I got stationed in Japan, like right after my schooling. And so go over to Okinawa, Japan. Martial arts are obviously very big there and a part of their way of life. So obviously I got in touch with it there, and then I was just fascinated right out of the gate. I was buying the DVDs off the shelf. I didn't know if they were old ones, new ones, but they were all new to me, and so I'd watch them, and I became a fan through the sport then. And I ended up meeting a guy that was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. And this would have been in 2004. So a purple belt in jiu-jitsu was like, wow, that is unreal. And the guy showed us a few things, and I loved it. And then fast forward, I get out of the Marines, still very interested, huge MMA fan, kind of sorting my thing out, trying to find out what I want to do. And I start going to college for exercise physiology and start training at the same time. I found Easton Training Center, jiu-jitsu school, to start training jiu-jitsu at the same time as I was going to college. I go to college for exercise physiology and graduate. From there, I started my internship under Lauren Lando, and just kind of worked my way through that. Kind of learned the science of strength conditioning, sports performance. How to make athletes better in a fully encompassed way. So not just their strength conditioning, but helping them with their nutrition, helping them with their mindset. Making sure that they're trying to make good decisions throughout their training camp, inform them what's good, what's bad. Because a lot of them don't have those resources available to them, and I kind of just wanted to become the guy I wish I had when I was a kid. That would have taught me these things. When I was an athlete, and I could have used them. And so I still love working with kids. That are going to play football, play basketball, lacrosse, whatever. I love working with all those kids too, because, I see myself, like in that, like I can help these kids be better athlete, be who I wish I would have had when I was a kid. And that motivates me all the time. But to be in the same room with a lot of the fighters and to help them along their journey is priceless to me. I love being involved with that type of a game.
So you're currently a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's funny because I have that same obsessive behavior about something, because you talked about getting into the UFC and buying all the videos and like just almost getting, just completely obsessing over the art and over everything that surrounds it. Knowing what you know now, and being a person from the Midwest, because I'm a fellow Midwesterner, are you a little surprised you didn't take up wrestling in high school or have an interest in collegiate wrestling at all?
Well, I actually did. Yes, I very much did. Yes, but my school didn't offer it. We didn't have basketball.
That's shocking, especially being someplace in Kansas. Like, I went to high school in Iowa, and people were obsessed with wrestling in Iowa, and even in Nebraska where I live now, it's like people are obsessed with wrestling, especially in the small towns. And I never put two and two together why they're so obsessed with it, but that's fascinating.
Next town over, Lyons, Kansas, had wrestling, and I asked my parents, like, can I move to that school? And it was a hard no. It was one conversation. It never made it past the second conversation. I grew up liking like the WWE and professional wrestling kind of until I found out it was like fake in middle school. And then I was like, oh, well.
Yeah.
But I would have wrestled for sure. I would have wrestled if that would have been the option. I definitely would have done that.
In fairness, just because we want to be on the right side of history here, the acting of pro wrestling is fake. The physicality is very real.
Yes, no, yeah. They definitely put themselves through some punishment for sure.
Oh my gosh. So one of the things you touched on was mentorship, and it's probably one of the more rewarding things at your job. And I just know that, not even knowing you, I know that because that's a common thread I have noticed through all the martial artists I've talked to, through all the coaches I've talked to, through anybody that's been involved in this industry that I've talked to, is how important paying forward that knowledge is.
Yeah.
So, considering the fact that you were also in the Marine Corps for 4 years, how did that lend to your structure of leadership and your mentorship of other people?
Yeah, I've led guys. I've been in that position in the military at a young age, and so it's something I'm comfortable with, and I'm not the loud guy. I'm not going to yell at people. I'm not going to chew them out and try to embarrass them or anything like that. I try to connect to them on a deeper level and let them understand, what the reward is versus what we're sacrificing. Like what do you want to give up? Are you going to choose the moment, or are you going to choose what you want long term? And it's kind of, I learned it through poor leadership. Like I experienced a lot of poor leadership, and from seeing that, I was like, well, I don't want to be that kind of leader. I want to be a leader that is like, the people want to tell me what's going on, and I think it's helped me go a long way, with the fighters. It's such a loud sport, and I'm sure they're yelling at themselves in their head, and so I don't want to be that for them again. I don't want to beat them while they're down. It's tough. I understand it's tough. And so, I try to be that type of person where I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but at the same time, I'm not going to chew you out. It's your decision. It's your decision. At the end of the day, it's your career, but it's good to give, people a little bit of a kick in the ass, cause it can be tough. It can be tough at times. You don't want to do it, or you have some things going on in your head. And so I try to have a soft but firm approach, and I think it really gets me a lot of buy-in with the guys, for sure.
For sure. As we're getting older, men that are getting older, it gets harder to rebound, from bad habits, or if you fall off that wagon. You can have this mode of discipline where you're working out every day, doing the 5-day-a-week thing, 6-day-a-week thing, 7-day-a-week thing, which is not the most healthy thing to do, people. But you have to have those rest days. But you could be like obsessive about it, right? And then you have 2 or 3 days where you fall off, and the 2 or 3 days turns to 2 or 3 weeks, turns into 2 or 3 months. What are some tenets of discipline that you would give somebody as advice if they do fall off?
Well, I try to say don't have 2 bad days in a row. Try to avoid 2 bad days in a row. Try to avoid 2 bad meals in a row. If you can avoid 2 in a row, then I think it'll keep you away from really letting that snowball, because it's tough and especially when guys are injured. This is when you have to check in on them the most. Because it's like, and I know this is the same for me. I'm all in or I'm all out. So it's like, I'm not able to train. I'm not able to work out. Well, then I guess it's all the bad habits can come out now, because a lot of my good habits are there because I need to be prepared for my training. If I make bad decisions off the mat, then I'm going to feel it on the mat. So it gives me a little bit more buy-in. But if I don't have that security of going to the mat, if I know I'm not going to go to the mat, then it's a little bit easier to kind of get off track. And so try not to have 2 bad days in a row, but I'll reach out. If I haven't seen somebody in a little while, like, hey, what's going on? Like, what's up? Like, we got to get back to work before, things get
right.
You got to control, because it's a long road back. It's a long, it's a 1 week's worth of damage is not 1 week's worth of recovery to come back. It's the older you get, that number gets longer and longer. So
yeah, it's funny you say that, because I've got a text group of friends, and we're kind of each other's accountability buddies, right?
Yeah.
And I brought that up the other day. I'm like, as we get older, undoing our bad habits gets harder and harder every single time. And some of that's a byproduct of age, but some of it's also just the fatigue of getting older in particular, So more specifically speaking, like, if somebody's had a long stretch of bad days, how do you get them to break that hump mentally?
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta, the hardest part at that point is showing up.
Yeah.
And so you gotta get in the car. Just get in the car. That's the battle, like, get in the car and come but don't go back to the training schedule you had when you stopped.
Right.
Cause then you get you can't sustain that. So you want to go back to what's reasonable, just go in and getting through the door is that first habit. And there's a lot of benefit just in that, like breaking your routine of staying at home, coming in, even if you just ride the bike for 15 minutes and then leave. All right, well then the next day you're going to stay for 20 minutes, and so it has to be sustainable. But that's the biggest challenge is getting in the car and going at that point,
Yeah. Are you familiar with James Clear, the Atomic Habits? Are you familiar with that at all?
I think so, no.
Oh, okay. You got to check this out. He actually has a viral video that describes what you just said to a T. So he talks about this guy that he knows that lost 100 pounds. The guy set himself a goal that he's going to lose 100 pounds within a year. And for the first 2 months, he would go to the gym, only spend 5 minutes at the gym, and then go home. And what he was doing was conditioning himself in the art of showing up for that first 2 months. And he was successful. He not only hit that goal, he actually beat that goal within a year. So
That's awesome.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because that, again, it's another common thread.
Yeah, so, that's the toughest thing is step one, once you get there, like, okay, you feel a little bit lighter, once you get in there. And so it's tough though. I get it. It's like, because it's not going to be easy. Not as easy as it could be.
Yeah. So as I said at the start of our conversation, you had a fun day today. You posted a picture. Who were you working with today?
Yeah, so future lightweight champ Justin Gaethje had his last workout with us today. His last conditioning session. So he's ready to go. It's next weekend. He's a main event going for the title against Charles Oliveira, and I think he's ready to go. He started working with this nutritionist before the Chandler fight, and he never broke his diet. And man, the body transformation that he's made since starting with that nutritionist, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. Like, power to him for his consistency and commitment to it. Because it's tough to, like, I'm talking like he's been on a diet for like maybe 30 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
Like 30 weeks straight. Like, and it doesn't, and it's like been consistent with it. So it's shown a lot of dividends, and I'm really excited to see him go perform. I mean, who's not excited for just
right.
Like, you don't have to have any involvement with this guy to get fired up for his fights.
Yeah, before you and I pressed record, we were talking about it, and I said, there was a spark that happened right around the Tony Ferguson fight where I was already convinced that Justin was going to be wearing a strap before too long. And in that Chandler fight, my gosh, my son thought I was a crazy person. I had hot sauce all over from my face from the wings I was eating. I was 5 inches away from the TV, jumping up and down, saliva flying everywhere because I'm screaming. That was amazing. So I'm super, super pumped for May 7th. That is going to be an amazing event.
Yeah. I mean, the card's really stacked from top to bottom, if you look at it. And it's funny, I was at the Gaethje Chandler fight. I was there for that fight, and they opened the card. So they were the first fight on the pay-per-view.
I know.
And everyone stood the entire fight. Everyone stood, it was high energy in there. And then after that fight was over, I think everyone was like exhausted because the next fight was also a barn burner.
Yes.
Fight. Yeah. No one cared. One cared. Everyone was still recovering.
Yeah, I think one of the guys on commentary, it might have even was DC on commentary, made that comment. It's like everybody was still on fire about the Gaethje Chandler fight that they didn't even hardly notice the bout after.
I can't even remember who the guys were, but they threw down.
Exactly. I was just gonna say that. I was like, do you remember who else was even on the card?
I don't, but they stole the show, and so I'm expecting it to be, there's never been a Gaethje fight that hasn't been that way.
Right.
You just know, like, any moment something wild could happen. So
right.
I'm sure May 7th will be no different.
Right. So what does it mean to you when you see somebody like Justin, like Kamaru, or somebody that you've worked with have such great success?
Man, it just is. It's priceless, man. It's like, I mean, I'm fortunate to be a part of it, but it just, you feel so good for them because you see the sacrifices they make. You see all the hard practices that they show up for, days they don't want to do those things, the sacrifices they make. These are the guys that this is what they do. When it's time to train for it, they're all in. Like they don't live a lot outside of that. That's kind of what their life is just fighting. And it's the opposite of winning. That's so costly. It just hurts so bad. That it makes winning like such a relief, so enjoyable, and it's. Especially when you're talking for a belt, to be the best in the world, and that's just got to be amazing for them. So I mean, it's amazing to watch them put all that work in, and then to get the result that we all know that they deserve, and a lot of guys deserve it and still don't get it, and that's the tough part of the sport. But I mean, when you can get a win, man, soak that up. It's
For sure. One of my friends, Taryn, she went to University of Nebraska at Kearney, and she knew Kamaru there. And so she knew him when he was on the wrestling team, and I guess they did laundry together or what else,
Yeah.
Funny stuff. But it is crazy how much of a tight-knit community MMA is.
Yeah.
And how much of a small world atmosphere that's created. It is like a family, right?
Yeah.
When you get to know these people and you cross paths with them, you start cheering them on, not just in the fighting world, but in their everyday lives, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have clientele at the gym that are just general population, non-athletes, just want to be in shape, be healthy. And they may work out the same time as Justin Gaethje. Mm-hmm. And man, the way they talk about them, like they all like are like their moms. It's like, man, they feel it too. They start getting nervous, and they're super excited for it all. And so it is like a family, and that's, I think, because fighters are so accessible.
Yeah.
Like we have Broncos players that come into the, a lot of football players, not just Broncos, but, Russell Wilson's in, no one's going up and talking to him. Right. Like everyone's like, oh shit, it's Russell Wilson, like right. Don't look over there, like everyone's awkward about it. But when Justin Gaethje's there, he's inviting people into the conversation. Kamaru, if there's kids working out next to him, he's fist bumping them saying, keep getting after it. And, they're just so welcoming. And you don't get that feel where it's like, this is a high level athlete, or even this is a dangerous guy, like you don't get that feel from it. And so it's just, yeah, I mean, it is like a family. These guys are welcome people into their lives, and, they're open to it, open to letting people in. And so it's cool to see, it goes way beyond just the coaches that are involved with it. Anybody that's in the room in there, and Gaethje knows who they are. Kamaru knows those guys, that show up at the same time as him. The kids, Kamaru comes in the evening, so it's a lot of kids in there.
Right.
But he has a kid himself, and so he pumps them up, and they all love it. They love it, and so it goes a long way. And get a lot of people rooting for you that way.
The very last episode of the podcast that I recorded, I actually recorded with a fellow podcaster, and her wheelhouse is actually in paranormal activity and all that fun stuff, but she's a huge MMA fan. And we talked about this specific issue where I said, I came from the music world, and I don't need to name drop anybody, but I brush shoulders with a lot of people that had a lot of success in the music world, and I brush shoulders with other professional athletes. But there's something about fighters and the sense of humility that fighters have that keeps them incredibly grounded. And I don't know if it's the fact that the only time they really need to have a chip on their shoulder is that 3 to 5 rounds that they're in the octagon, to where they just they have such a great level of humanity outside of that.
There's even the best guys have tough days at the gym,
right?
Tough days at practice, and so it's special, man. They're a special group of people, and that's why I think I just love. That's what draws me to them even more than my love for the sport. Is they're just easy guys to work with, and a lot of them come from a tough story. A lot of them come from a story where it's like they've had to fight their way out of whatever situation they were in to get where they are, and I got a lot of respect for that. It's a guy that I can really talk with, connect with, and that's always comforting.
Yeah. So what's something you wish you knew when you started out in this career field that you know now?
Well, I minored in nutrition. I had a love for nutrition, so I was like, oh, that's just natural, like exercise physiology. It should have been psychology, though. I should have minored in psychology. I wish I would have done a lot more psychology work because that is a huge factor in this field.
What would be your advice for making the world a better place right now?
That's funny. I actually just had this conversation this morning with one of my clients. We, and our take on it, we agree on it. His name's Dimitri. He just focus on your circle, focus on the people around you, and teach them how to take care of the people that are in their circle as well. You're going to spread yourself too thin if you're trying to cover this huge field of people or this large population of people. If you make your circle, if you take care of your circle that you're tight with, I think that's how you make the world a better place. And don't do it for attention.
Right. Don't virtue signal.
Don't virtue signal. No, that's not helping anyone, So yeah.
Yeah. So you're also a family man, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you have a daughter?
I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old dog. Yeah.
So are they fascinated by what you do at all? Your family?
Yeah, my dad, I'll go even further than just because my 5-year-old daughter, she likes it, but she's more into like what color are they wearing,
right.
But she's more into that. She'll be like, who are you going for? And then she'll look at them and she'll make her decision based off their appearance. But so that's kind of where she's at in her game. But she, she likes watching them train and she comes into the gym with me on a fair amount of basis to jiu-jitsu classes and to the workouts. She's been there for Kamaro's workouts before. And so, she knows who he is and connects with him. He has a daughter a similar age. And, fighters are always cool with her. They, I have fighters that babysit her. So, it's she's part of the community too. She loves it. She'll grow up in that community for sure. She knows a lot more than I did when I was 5. But back to my dad kind of surprised me when I came back from the Marines. He was also into MMA. And, he would get like way behind on it. It would be like on Spike TV. It would be like years after the fight had happened. And he'd be like, Rich Franklin and so-and-so are fighting tonight. Did you see that? And it's like Thursday night. I'm like, that was like 4 years ago. But, so he loves that I'm involved with it. My mom's always been super supportive of no matter what I do. So she's lives in Omaha, actually.
Oh, nice.
And so she's coming out this weekend. I'm going to take her over to sparring. So she's going to come watch sparring. So I've done a handful of jiu-jitsu tournaments and jiu-jitsu pro matches. And she's been to those. And so she likes it. She doesn't watch it so much, but yeah, everyone's super supportive about that stuff. I think they all kind of knew. I have an older brother, 2 younger sisters, and I think everyone kind of knew that I was going to go do something outside of the farm, that we grew up on. My brother's still there. My 2 sisters are in Kansas City, but we all kind of knew that I was going to come do something like this in athletics. I think it was pretty clear. I'd try to find my way into athletics somehow.
That's amazing. Well, sir, it is no secret why you have been successful with what you're doing, and I wish you all the best. And I'm glad to have you on the show, man.
I appreciate it, man. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah.
Maybe we start doing some analysis later down the line. I'll be like,
sure.
Let's do a 10-minute real quick podcast thing we throw up on YouTube where we do some fight analysis or something.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, anytime we can talk about fighting or any of that stuff, I'm locked in, so. Yeah,
awesome.
We're looking at having a pretty busy summer, so I'm sure there'll be some stuff to recap as the summer goes on. I think some big stuff will happen. We got some contestants on Ultimate Fighter. We have
yes.
Sure Kamaru's going to fight, I'm sure, sometime this summer. Corey Sandhagen will get back in there.
Yeah.
Drew Dober will be in there soon. We'll be getting a lot of guys that'll be fighting this summer. I think July, August are going to be pretty busy for us. So, yeah, anytime, man. I'm down to come on. Man,
thank you very much, Aaron. The world's a better place with you in it, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, man.
I once again want to thank Aaron Porter for being on the show today. He was a great guest. Thanks again to my friends at Elevation Fight Team for the Connect. And check out Landau Performance online, www.landauperformance.com. They do great work, and their roster is very impressive. While you're cruising around online, make sure you check out www.caughtonthemic.com. Give me a follow on all forms of social media. I am definitely getting more active on Twitter. Thank you very much to my last guest. And check me out on TikTok, Instagram, or wherever you cruise social media. I'm always appreciative of the 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app, and now you can rate this show on Spotify and Facebook as well. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark, and until next time, thank you.